Morning class. Welcome to LA Chess Club Intermediate class once again. This is your professor this morning, National Master Ruben Ondungan. I would like to show this morning and present to you a game. And the title of this morning's class is Chess Double or Deja Vu and Trouble on F7. And here I will present two games, part 1 and part 2. Hopefully we have enough time for both of them. And this will be a first game with the same theme or motive, and that is the weakest spot on black's position, the F7 square. I would like you to pay attention to that vulnerable spot on the black's king side. Okay? And this game was played in March 24 of 2013. And the second AB Masters Spring Open, and my opponent is National Master Larry Smith, 2250 guy. So the game went, I was white, e4, he played d6. Starts perch defense. I played knight c3. The most common move here, class, by the way, is d4, just gain control of the center. But you see, I already explained that most of the time I add psychology in my games. Alright, and knight c3 is just to make my opponent think early on. And he played a knight f6 standard, and here I played a non-standard move in the position. You don't normally see this, what they call the f-pawn spike. f4 was played, and my idea is to play knight f3 without blocking the f-pawn and immediately create some sort of attack on black's king side early on. So I already declare my intention very early in the game, and that is I'm not taking any draw. Alright, this will be a serious fight for whoever wins, who will ever win the game. So knight f3, I mean after f4, knight bd7. Now beforehand I found out that my opponent plays the lion. They call this setup the lion for black, where they play the knight f6, d7, they put a pawn on e5, play c6, and it depends on the situation whether he play fianchetto the bishop on g7 or bishop to e7, and that distinguished this very passive looking setup, but actually it's very hard to force an advantage for white. So here after knight bd7 I played knight f3, and he could play on with e5, and what we have is a transposition, and actually in one of the lines of the e4 e5 opening. I believe this is called the Hanham variation of the Philidor's defense. However, with the insertion of f4, we are in some lines also of the King's Gambit, which was declined. All right, f4 is a playboard in the King's Gambit. So here I played bishop c4. And for a moment, let's evaluate the position of the forces before us. White has 3 outs. Knight on f3 and c3 are well placed. Bishop on c4, already eyeing the f7 square. Am I right? And we have a knight on f6, a d7, which blocks the bishop. Very minor. Right, very minor problem in black's camp. He's solid, at the same time passive. Compared to us, we're active, but we need to be clear cut in our continuation. So here, played bishop e7 with the idea of castling, right? And everything will, after he castle in this position, he'll be happy, safe, secured, and so no problem.
So you'll castle, or black will castle, and if the F knight arrives on
g5,
nobody in their right mind is going to go for that f7 square and trade off
when it is castled.
pieces, right?
Correct, because the threat is to castle, and knight g5 doesn't work anymore because the f7 is secured, bolstered, protected. There's no point jumping to g5 now, and it will require much more time to open avenue, for example the f file, right, and bring other forces to attack f7. So, with that in mind, that his next move will be castling, we have to disturb the equilibrium immediately on, the balance of the game. And Quiet Waters, White suddenly played, anybody? A very disturbing move, bishop takes f7 check. And this against a 2250 player. I'm saying to myself, you must be out of your mind. Bishop takes f7 check. Now here, you will see that after the capture, king takes f7, we have your idea of knight g5 check. Like what I mentioned, psychology plays a vital role in most of my games, in that I just want to give my opponent problem and trouble. Perry told me that I'm a troublemaker. I always create problems and trouble. For example, there's only one or two square that the king can go, and that is on g8 and g6. Of course, g6, that will be a disaster. For example, check here, and all kind of bad things might happen. For example, we can give away a knight. Check. Right? And after king takes, and we can check, and the game is basically close to being over. King here, and it will be a matter of time before the king who did a walk in the park will find itself checkmated. Okay.
Well, that's pretty clever, because wherever black puts the king, that knight can go in
This
to give a queen check.
that's what happened in the game. So
And then the queen has to move over,
very good.
but then you get c7 and that rook if you want it.
That's what happened in the game, and I'm presenting to you two games of similar concept this morning, similar situation. And here, king g8 is the only move. Then, what about king f8? Anyone? Tactics.
E6.
Knight e6 check, and
Bad fork.
okay, bad pork. And king e8,
You do the same thing.
same thing. We checkmated the queen. Okay, so you see now, class, that there's only really one square for the king to go, and that is on g8. And after our next move,
Knight in.
knight to e6 attacks the queen. Rita said the queen only has one square, so these are all pores move. It's good always to play moves that are pores, so that you only have a very clear path to analyze, right, calculate, and so on. So this is all pores.
Yeah.
So king e8. Now your next move,
Knight in.
knight takes c7, and here there's two ways to go on for black here. Here, National Master Larry Smith went queen to g6. There you go. And we would like to capture the rook on the corner immediately. However, he has some sort of counterplay on g2. So things which should you go first? Capture or secure the king? Secure g2.
Secure g2.
Castle. All right. So for the moment, let's take stock.
So why
After
do that and not do
Yeah.
queen e2 is playable as well, but between here a choice.
Because then you've got to
Yeah, but then
check.
you're in the queen is going
You move up to
You have a
c4,
choice
you gotta-
between g2 and queen. All right. This looks very nice as well, which is actually needed in the position. However, it's also good, always good to tuck in your king into safety. All right, between two choices of move. And this accomplished two things: king safety and pawn protection. Actually, three: placing the rook on an open pile. So one move achieved three aims in the position, and a move, in order for it to be considered good or excellent, it need to contain not only one idea but two or more. Okay, but this one contains two or more. Between castle and queen e2, castle. Okay, from here he has an opportunity to save the rook on b8. So let's take stock. We let go of that very strong bishop on the light square on c4. what we got in return are 2 pawns. Is that enough compensation?
And a compromised king didn't count.
And a compromised king that is not castle, but we start looking also on the concept of development. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5. And we have castle, knight, 2, 3. And so with regards to time, black is ahead. Material, black is ahead. Correct? Now, the chess is a battle of time, pores, and space. Am I right? So with time, he is ahead. With pores, he is ahead. And computer will evaluate this as better for black. Right? So what are we fighting here for, Ruben? Why are you showing us this game where you are losing? Now, here, the books will not tell you the element of human nature. All right? And that is part of the computer doesn't consider being given problem or receiving them. In the human way of playing chess, to err is human. In other words, how do you make your opponent make mistake? Psychology, right? You just pressure them, apply all kind of tricks, deception, right? And all kind of trouble until your opponent cannot take it anymore. So here, the trouble that we've caused him is the king that was out in the open so early and now find itself tucked in G8, blocking its own rook on the corner. And so there is some sort of problem in his position that is what white is trying to aim for. Go ahead, Rita.
If instead of castling, you took the queen up to protect G2 pawn,
Mm-hmm.
what do you suppose he would have done?
If queen f3, you see here, you are taking the job that belongs to the...
E2.
Oh, okay. In
With the
E2?
plan of going to C4 for a check.
Mm-hmm. But
Meanwhile, while he's moving his
your
king-
plan of c4 looks good if the queen is not able to block it. Otherwise, exchanges favors who? Tell me. Black, because he has much more material. Our goal here, after sacrificing the bishop, is keep everybody alive so that we can use them for attacking purposes. Am I right? So you cannot really allow any more further exchanges. Otherwise, your whatever advantage or disadvantage you have will really result in a loss for white. So here,
What if you took the
we have to bring a fresh man out into the game because the queen is more flexible in going places compared to the rook.
just because I'm trying to learn strategy?
Sure, sure.
I'm thinking, okay, so he blocks the queen,
Mhm.
but you block with the knight. So
But you are playing with your pieces again and again, moving the same pieces twice without allowing the rest of your army being part of the game. That's not very good strategy. You still have to consider that do not move your pieces again in the open until everybody is really out. So this is your idea. For example, queen e2. It's probably easy to parry the queen c4 check. Okay, knight b6 rules out your, and that's it. It's gone into the trash bin. Okay, so we really cannot prove some one check, and that's it to base our strategy on. It's very bad strategy. You just see one check. Somebody said in Chess Life, a patzer sees a check, a patzer makes a check.
somebody just said that last
Yeah, that's not me. Okay, so don't blame me. Somebody said that on Chess Live. It's a saying. But just because you saw a check doesn't mean it's a good one. But also, say Alberto Ross said, never miss a check.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have to consider things, right? You know, you have to weigh them very carefully. But here, class, I want you to pay attention that you need really to place your king into safety, third principle of opening, right? Bringing another fresh man into the game, the rook, right? Opening the f-file, hopefully that you can cause problem to the enemy king, right? And other than that, you're just catching up in development. Okay? So, castle, and after castle, he played rook b8. That's what we did. Now queen e2. There's our chance, opportunity. There's what you want to play in the position. The check, and also it protects e4, all right? Because this is under attack twice. Now earlier he cannot capture the e4 because He can't capture here because the rook is hanging on b8, correct? And so he has to save it, and he said, okay, I'm happy here because mathematically I am ahead of my opponent. Go ahead.
Why don't you push the D2 pawn, because that would also make
Very good question.
replacement
Here,
of your
in good point. What's your name? Christopher. Very good point. Now, between moves, and you heard this a lot from your professor, that between pawn move and a piece move, always choose the piece. Okay? Now, this is a non-developing, and it could actually not be played, maybe not needed yet in the position. However, here, you achieve again two purposes in the game, at least two. Not only to defend, now the queen check that Rita was trying to play is possible, and it makes your opponent think, and that's very important. It's causing your opponent how to think, causing them problem. Go ahead.
So I know I talked about the queen to e2, but are we overloading the queen now? Because the queen's defended g2, e4, and we're also asking it to potentially put a check on.
C4, yes. So what is the question again?
Are we overloading the queen?
Are we overloading the queen? No. The idea of the queen is not just to depend it, because this is dependent. The defense of e4 is required in the position or demanded. The idea is to create a trouble on c4, but of course we have to take into consideration the blocking of the queen, which will facilitate exchanges, and that's not good. But it's a threat, and a threat will make your opponent think, right? A problem will cause them to stop, look, and listen. Right? And after queen e2, let's see what happened. He played knight c5 there, and you will see that one move, the bishop was open, very dangerous. The knight comes out with effect tempo on e4, right? And suddenly the check here will not really make any sense now because of the bishop blocking it, or the knight, or even the queen still. So first of all, our problem is how to bolster e4. It's protected twice, attack 3 times. Okay, now you move so that that bishop will not see the light of day. F5 with gain of tempo. Okay, so F5, making sure that that bishop will not arrive here, or else it will be very dangerous. So now we are hoping here that black's queen will go h6. You know, if in a perfect world for white, come on, give me some chance here because I'm behind in material. Well, your opponent will not oblige, of course. After f5, queen f7, securing that diagonal, leading to his king. And so how do we continue here? Find a move for white. And so also finding a way to develop this. D3 looks very playable, but we still want to create something here in the queen side. So blocking the queen out, b4 is very good. Why? It gains a. So you see now, all you have to do is look at the position and find all the available moves for you and see which one is more logical. I see you're improving your understanding of the game. Just pinpoint all the possible moves. That's how computer thinks, by the way. Right? It's called algorithm. You just start looking at the position, all the possibility, no matter how ridiculous they are, they might be a good move. Here, b4 is very good because the knight is well placed on c5. That is considered an outpost. You have to drive it away. You can't leave that knight lingering there for too long. Okay, how does the knight retreat? Where does it go?
He's got d7.
D7, knight a6.
But the
Hope,
knight just-
you remember, he's trying to exchange forces. He said if exchanges will favor black here because he is mathematically ahead than white. And so here he attacks 2 forces, knight and our little soldier b4.
So that's a principle trade down in your
Yes,
set?
when you're ahead of in material, the best way to a shortcut to a win is trade, because when the number of pieces diminishes, the effect of your extra piece will tell in the game. Okay?
Can't you just move knight to d5?
Yes, which knight? Both of them can go there.
The one on c3.
The one on c3, the one on c3 also allow the exchange on c7. So what we're doing is, here the knight is on the corner. If there will be any exchanges of knight, this knight here needs to be exchanged, not that knight. That knight is on the edge of the board, correct? And we leave the there on the side and let it suffer by itself and spend its own tempo to get out of the edge. So this knight is the correct move. He can exchange, but I will be left with another knight, an outpost on d5. By the way, this is protected by that knight move. Okay. Knight 7, he tried to continue trying to exchange pieces, so he played bishop d8. And this time a transfer of the bishop there, maybe a knight c7 here. Okay, try to neutralize white's forces. Every black piece seems like it's doing something. The rook here, knight, bishop, except this bishop, but it also infused some life in black's position, by the way. The only problem is this rook in the corner that is being hemmed in by its own king. That could be a problem that we should take advantage while it's there. Okay? And so, class, you have to keep an eye every time on possibilities for white here. So, for the meantime, we have two forces that are not developed. What should we do? After bishop d8? So, you now see that there's no, at some sort, any attack for white on the queen side. The c4, the diagonal. So, we have no choice but really to open up the other bishop diagonal. And hopefully arriving bishop on g5 as a pin will be a strong idea. Here, my opponent really wants to trade. Knight e7. Come on, let's trade. Take out all the knight, and of course, National Master Larry Smith understand his position that if he can force all the exchanges, the extra piece will soon tell.
Is the better knight, if you're going to exchange, is the better knight to take the one on the
What should we do if you are being challenged? Like what I said earlier, avoid exchanges. Retreat! Retreating is not a sign of cowardness, right? You're not being afraid to fight. It seems like you're essentially saying to your opponent, to yourself, that I'm trying to regroup. Okay? I'm trying to make sure that all my pieces are there before I actually create an attack. So it's not bad sometimes to back down in a fight. Okay? So knight e3. He played bishop d7. Okay, very good. He's getting out of his shell, and it looks like the arrival of the bishop on c6 looks very strong. Okay, and now we have a problem. The bishop is being blocked by the knight. Okay, how should we, after bishop d7, first of all, let us evaluate the threat of that bishop there. Okay, if we allow that knight to really exchange, that's what he's aiming for, exchange, right? Eventually, we have no choice but to exchange it, because backing down again will allow a knight on the center of the board, a monster we created ourselves. So, we have to avoid that. So even though we want to play knight c4 here, I would like to play that immediately opens the bishop. Too much horsing around might deteriorate your position. So enough of the horsing around. Stop the threat on its track. b5 is now a battle suddenly.
A4.
So you see the battle of squares? Very good. a4 prevents black's idea. Play simple chess. You play like this, it's not really that complicated. Right? You just keep an eye on your opponent's threats, captures, and checks. His idea and strategy, and then before you continue on with your own desire, right, with your own plan and strategy, you make sure that your opponent doesn't have any strong moves at his disposal. So a4 was good, and now he played d5. Okay, a lot of players, especially Sicilian players, said once they play d5, the game is theirs. That's what Sicilian player said that if they are given the opportunity to play d5, either they neutralize the opponent, they achieve equality, or the initiative was transferred in their hand. Here is not that is not the case here, class, because after d5 here, we found black 2 hanging pawns. The e5 will become very weak here. The d6 square will become weak. And so, which way should we capture? We cannot allow this, of course. That was the threat. So, there was a requirement of force exchange, correct? To capture ed5. Now, did he blunder?
But doesn't the knight on f6?
He can he can capture it 3 times because it's depended twice. So he said, I can capture it anytime. Before he captured it, he brought a rook on c8 to create a discovery on the c file, on the c3 knight.
If you push the pawn.
If I push the pawn, does it,
No.
is it necessary?
No.
Because we will give this square for the knight. The knight can come here, c4. For example, knight here, and there will be a heavy traffic on the chessboard, and that knight will suddenly become a problem, right, for black. And I was planning to do that, but I said to myself, instead of playing d6 here, I said, I'm lagging behind in development, and I think he's really enticing me to push on, attack the knight with d6. So I said my pieces are not yet totally developed, and the discover here on the c file might create problem. Even though d6 looks very nice, it's probably playable, but I hesitate on it. So I played bishop d2 instead. So I said you can get your pawn back. I'm already the game is, I have 3 pawns for your bishop. That's about equal. Bishop is 3 points. Pawn is 1 point each, so mathematically it's about even here. And if I become too greedy and forward the pawn, it might backfire. So I said, let me catch up with development. So here, after bishop d2, my opponent played finally knight c takes d5. So that was the idea of the previous move. The rook on c8 suddenly unveiled itself and create some sort of discovery on the c file. Well posted rook, by the way. Knight c takes d5. How do you recapture?
With the e3.
With the e3?
No, C.
I was planning to place a knight here. So, knight c takes d5. Knight takes d5. Now here, class, this is a game 45 delay 5 tournament. So, it's a very short period of time. And hence, that's why I was able to play that bishop takes f7 early on. Because in a shorter period of time, you cannot really evaluate everything with very little time on the clock. And the situation demands it, right? And allows it. And so here, after a series of problematic position for black, he's probably very short in time here. Because my next move, the threat is knight f4. Exchanging favors black. So we avoid exchanges once again. What's your move?
C4.
Knight to c4 attacks the pawn on e5. Not only that, we threatened a fork. Now here, for a moment, let me pause and define to you what is combination. Combination is a series of moves. All right? The elements are pins, forks, double attack or double check, right? And discover attack or discover check. Those 4 are the elements of combination. And so you notice a lot of pins and forks in our middle game study. We're trying to create combination, right? Why? The masters look for them. The public applauds them, right? And you see, if you can create combination, it makes chess not boring, right? Just like in music, there is melody, in chess, there is combination. Okay, that is how you the analogy of chess and music. It's the triumph of mind over matter, right? And so here, knight c4, we have a threat of knight to d6. So he said between the two, he rather bolster this pawn and allow the pork to maintain a center pawn. He doesn't want to let go of that, so he allowed the pork here. Knight d6, which is not probably forced, because here he can always play, for example, queen f6, queen e7, but there could be problem in all those moves. For example, white can continue pressure on the center, and the lack of coordination of his forces is really very uneasy for black here. So he decided just to give away the rook. Probably not a good idea. And so I played knight d6, played queen e7, knight takes c8, and bishop takes. Now, thank goodness, because now we can start evaluating the materials. Black again has 2, 4, 5 pieces. Now we have 2, 4. We're still behind in material, but this rook here is really out of the game until now, right? And that is the problem in black's position. Everything else seems okay, right? So after bishop takes c8, ra b1, we have to watch out for this sudden opening. Ra b1 brought out his pawn, a bishop, to d7, attacking a4. What should you play? Of course, your automatic response will be b5, but look first before you make a move. After bishop d7, before you defend, see if you can attack. Okay, so here queen e4 attacks the knight, because bishop c6 protecting it falls into b5. Okay, so it will be a problem. So queen e4, knight b6 was played. Now our a4 is twice attacked. a5 is probably good, but now the bishop will be coming very strong on that light square. So here there's another very good move for white. Instead of attacking the knight furthermore, take a pawn on b7 and create a sudden attack on the back rank for black, because the rook and the king are stuck together there.
So is he going to move the king to f2 and then...
Well, here he captured the pawn. Bishop takes a4 with the discovery attack on my queen. There's an attack on c2. And if you are white here, how should you proceed? Now here is one of those cases, never miss a check. Okay? But where? There's only one square to check.
D.
d5 is not possible because of the knight. b8 check. And now you see here, it's a problem. If the king comes out, the rook drops. And now we're really ahead in material suddenly. After all the problem we gave black here.
Bishop e8.
Bishop e8. Okay, now his attack on c2 disappear. He said, again, he still have in his mind, I need to exchange. I'm still ahead. So he played queen d8. An exchange. But now I got queen takes a7, all whites, black's queen side falling one by one, because I foreseen that he cannot capture here, because if he does, we have a double attack, part of the combination queen, double attack. Okay, and so here he realized that I cannot even capture that. So what to do? To err is human, to resign is divine. There you go now. But here, after Queen takes a7, and he played queen d4 check. I said, let me have a check at least. King h1, h5. Okay, finally, the rook is about to see the light of the day. It was in the tunnel for so long. Rook b to e1. Here, probably this one should win immediately. Still, he cannot capture this pawn because of the check. But instead I played centralizing. Concept of centralization is always in my mind, and it sometimes become very automatic on me. You just centralize your forces, and what could go wrong with that, you know? But it's not the best in the position. Probably rook a1 is best. And my idea here is create a threat also. There's a lot of tricks in the position still. It's not over. And after here, RBE1, bishop c6. Now, of course, here I want to play this. I was itching to play here. But now he saves himself with queen d5, and I cannot capture the knight because of the threat of mate my camp. And so I prepared that idea. And instead, after bishop c6, play the prophylactic move, rook e2 first. Okay. Now queen d5, there's no threat. He was probably hoping to create something like this. Time trouble. Drop a knight, queen takes. And then rook to h5, rook h4, I'm sorry, h4. That's the threat. Now I played h3, stop the pawn before arriving to h3. And he was able to brought out his rook. And now they are planning to gang up on the g2 square, which is very easy to defend at this point. We have so many pieces to defend them. The two rooks are good enough to defend that weakness we have. Materially, we are now ahead after all the problem that we have caused our opponent. Okay, and the result why we are the investment that we made early on in the opening are creating in us some dividends is because of the problem that he has to experience during the game. And so chess is about giving your opponents problem. If you cannot give them problem, you will be receiving them. Okay, and that's just my understanding of chess. And here after rook h5, queen c5, it's now me, I who is wanting, let's exchange. Because I'm ahead. Now let's exchange. What? Of course he doesn't want queen c5. He avoids this because exchange doesn't help him. It's actually good for me. Queen d7, queen c4 check. Where does the king go? It goes to the corner. For example, it goes here. It's very dangerous. We could probably create an immediate attack on this rook, and I don't know where's the rook going. Do you see any? It will be stuck here, and now it's another bad position of the king and rook. Are you lovers? Because you're always together, right? So here he cannot go h8. He has to come out in the open and f8 because this is a retreat square for the rook. All right. The king f8, queen g4. See now? Rook h8. See? The rook was able to get out of that corner only to be sent back into prison. Right? And after bishop e3, my opponent said, I have to resign because this is coming. And then the check like this. So after bishop e3, National Master Larry Smith resigned.